This sound engineer should be diverted to another track and made to work on Thomas the Tank Engine. It's relevant. Don't buy a large drink when you see this film, because it will take real discipline to return to the auditorium when you leave to use the toilet.
Oh, that's really mean.
I mean, that's me with any film.
Stop going to the bathroom in the middle of films, people. A bunch of non-Asian people being their normal obnoxious selves in Japan. So it's a documentary, I guess.
Ooh, burn.
Man, that's...
It's a commentary on society.
So that is a collection of 2-star reviews from imdb.com.
Oh, we've upgraded to 2. Oh,
The 1 stars were not repeatable on air. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series and films. I'm Steven, joined as always by Andrew.
Hello.
And Ryan.
Hey.
So obviously, or not so obviously, because it's not been mentioned yet, we are going to be talking about Bullet Train for this episode. It just came out recently. I'm just going to put just a recently there. Not going to date this because I can't do that.
Well, I mean, like, if they're listening to the episode, they've seen the thumbnail.
Theoretically, yes.
In theory.
Theoretically, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are talking about Bullet Train. And it is definitely a film that centers around something very important, which is maybe oftentimes referred to as a MacGuffin.
Yep.
So before we actually get into discussing Bullet Train, we're going to talk about, I hesitate to use the word favorite, but another film or series
that uses a MacGuffin.
I would be really impressed if there was a series that employed a MacGuffin. That almost might be hard to maintain.
That's not, no, I mean, like, there's,
Lost is probably all a MacGuffin, right? Like,
well, but that's the thing, though. It's very nebulous. Like, you need something specific.
Should we define what MacGuffin is?
So MacGuffin is a object, a person, possibly even a place that is necessary and drives the plot forward. So it doesn't do anything on its own.
Yeah.
It just kind of exists. A couple of examples that I don't think we're going to list in this would be something like Lord of the Rings. So the One Ring, Saving Private Ryan. So you can cover kind of a broad spectrum with this. It's just so long as it is the reason or the motivation to drive it. So without giving away any kind of twists or major plot elements, we're just going to kind of pitch a movie that we like that features a MacGuffin and kind of maybe set the stage, give us some characters, what's going on relatively, and go from there.
Yeah.
Who wants to kick us off first?
I'll take it. I'll go
right.
first. My one of my favorite MacGuffins is the dude's rug from The Big Lebowski.
Oh,
yeah.
In this movie, you got this slacker guy, the dude, and he gets mistaken for this guy named the Big Lebowski.
And now this is played by
Jeff Bridges.
I kept trying to say Mark Bridges, and I didn't want to say it because it was going to be horrible.
The Jeff Bridges.
Yes.
And basically, these debt collectors mistake him because he has the same last name of Lebowski as the Big Lebowski. So they come to his house to try to collect the debt that he doesn't have. He doesn't know what they're talking about.
And when we say debt collectors, we're talking about the kind that show up with baseball bats, not lawyers.
Yeah.
And
break
so
your thumbs kind.
Yeah.
They destroy his rug, and it really tied the room together. And then the entire rest of the movie is basically him trying to get restitution for this rug, and it kind of sets the events of the movie into to action. And so that for me has always been a fun one of like, it's all about this rug that like
it really put the room together, man.
Yeah, really tied the room together.
Yeah.
And you've got Steve Buscemi,
John Goodman, Julianne Moore is in there.
It's a great cast.
Philip Seymour Hoffman's like super young.
Yep.
Yeah, and early like Tara Reid too, I think.
Yeah, Tara Reid early in her
cameo.
career.
Yeah. So, but good cast.
Yeah.
Good writing.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. It's one of my favorite Coen Brothers movies.
It lands in that kind of cult classic realm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would almost say, too, that some people
oversell
it's
it.
almost been memified.
It is.
Oh,
it's a very good movie. I enjoy it immensely, but I think some people don't fully get it and they just watch it to quote funny lines from it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not really trying to be that kind of comedy. It's really a pretty deep comedy if you look at like a lot of the layers, but like a lot of people I think have memified it into the point that it's just like,
well, and that kind of Big Lebowski and just Coen Brothers films in general is very similar to the film or for Bullet Train that we're kind of like reviewing because they have a lot of multifaceted storylines that all kind of just interact with each other,
Yeah.
but they're essentially unrelated at a surface
It's
level.
almost like there's something tying it all together.
Yeah, the MacGuffin.
The MacGuffin, or in this case, a rug.
A rug, yeah.
Yeah.
Andrew?
Sure. So I actually picked, this isn't really my favorite MacGuffin, but I love the use of it in this film.
Okay, that's a good-
Which is emphatically exactly what a MacGuffin is. And we have actually already reviewed it on this podcast before.
Oh, yeah?
It is the Declaration of Independence from National Treasure.
Yeah. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Self-advertisement. Hey, if you want to check out our other content, spoilersintendedpodcast.com.
Yep. So this is basically, National Treasure, Nicolas Cage,
Yeah.
and Sean Bean as the antagonist. Basically,
No, not Sean Bean.
Never.
They are kind of competing at the beginning of the film to basically find a map that they believe is on the back of the Declaration of Independence. So they have to basically steal the independence to save the independence, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it is definitely one of my favorite kind of earlier kind of MacGuffin chases, just because one is the Declaration of Independence, which is hilarious. But then you have a couple switcheroos
Mhm.
where you don't really know who actually has it throughout the film.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
also, it's emphatically a Nicolas Cage movie at the same time.
Yeah.
In the best way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is definitely one of my favorite films that he's done. Just wholesale.
It is a very entertaining film.
Yeah. Especially for what it is.
Mhm.
But yeah, if you've somehow never seen National Treasure, I would definitely go watch it. It's totally worth it.
Well, I guess it's up to me now. And speaking of tying everything together, my movie also features Brad Pitt. Not in a leading role. We're going with Snatch.
Yep.
Mm.
Figured that one was coming.
Yeah, I love this movie. So this,
I thought you were going to say Brad Pitt, and I was like, that's also fair.
I mean,
Right.
don't get me wrong. We talk about, big name actors being a draw, and generally speaking, Tom Cruise or Brad Pitt, you're like, yeah, this is probably at least has a high floor.
Yeah.
We're not just
Yeah.
going to get a total dumpster fire.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this has Brad Pitt, Jason Statham, who is not playing his typical
Himself.
macho man role.
Yeah.
He's very much so not in charge here. Got people like Benicio del Toro.
Yeah.
Alan Ford is one of kind of the villains, or as he phrases it, nemesis. But basically, it starts with a diamond heist, and the diamond is not transported properly from the heist. So suddenly we have all of these different characters who are interested in
The diamond.
obtaining this diamond. But we have a lot of other neat little subplots going on. Jason Statham is basically a underground boxing manager.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt is a bare knuckle boxing pikey or gypsy
Pikey.
who legit, I don't know if they actually made him learn any lines for half the movie. He just says things.
When you turn subtitles on, it just says pikey gibberish.
Or like
When he's
it just
talking.
puts question marks.
Yeah, you're not supposed to
You're not
understand
supposed
what
to know what he
sometimes.
says. Yeah. But it's a Guy Ritchie film. It has a lot of similarities to Bullet Train. We got a lot of really good witty dialogue, quick cuts, the little flashback, these kind of things that happen within. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of my first exposures. I don't want to say to a MacGuffin per se, but it's definitely one of my favorite versions of it.
Yeah, uses of it.
Because it's pretty violent. I mean, there's a lot of people who get shot and that kind of stuff in the middle of it, but it's also still a really fun film.
Yeah.
Which is a weird thing to say. But speaking of a film where there's a lot of people who get shot, and it's also pretty fun. I feel pretty safe saying that. We are talking about Bullet Train. And we're going to kick this off. I'm going to hand out a quick little plot synopsis. And I love the way this synopsis starts. Ladybug is an unlucky assassin who's determined to do his job peacefully after one too many gigs has gone off the rails. Fate, however, may have other plans as his latest mission puts him on a collision course with lethal adversaries from around the globe, all with connected yet conflicting objectives on the world's fastest train. That sums it up pretty well, I think.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kick this off with a little score here. And this is done. We all rate the movie on 5 factors. So we're looking at the spectacle, the performance, the score, the plot, and our entertainment We put all those numbers together, mishmash them around a little bit, and what we came out with for this is a 7.
Yeah.
That's respectable.
It's respectable. I feel that's a little low, but my entertainment is much higher than maybe some other people. So
Yeah,
I feel like that's pretty accurate.
I think there's we're both going to look at the other person and say, I feel like there's a factor here.
Yep.
There is.
But it's definitely a type of a movie that appeals to me.
Yeah.
And I absolutely went into it thinking this is going to be really dumb. And I'm just, it's something recent. We're going to watch it for the cast. I probably wouldn't go to the theaters to see it. And I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
So some thoughts?
I thought it was pretty good.
We'll start with Ryan first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty good. I think my biggest drawbacks for me is that I thought visually it was amazing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the comedy just did not land for me.
Interesting.
And ironically, I didn't really care for Brad Pitt that much in this movie.
Oh, no.
Like, yeah, he wasn't
Wow.
charismatic to me at all. And that really
What?
detracted from the movie for me. Because
Oh, no.
I was like, well, I also recently just watched, Ocean's 11 and Fight Club. And so I've seen Brad Pitt at peak Pitt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so maybe I just assumed he would, in my opinion, be way more, I guess, better than what he was. It was a letdown for me, Brad Pitt's part of it. For me, it was a very good movie, very entertaining. Like, I think this is a fun time regardless. I just think that the transitioning back and forth between action and comedy was not handled as
Cleanly.
cleanly or as
There's
smoothly
a couple clunky parts
as
in there.
someone like Snatch by Guy Ritchie,
Right.
or like a Edgar Wright movie like Hot Fuzz
Yeah.
or Baby
Yeah.
Driver. I feel like those movies do a better job of mixing in the soundtrack, the editing, the comedy bits land and transition better. I feel like for me, it just every now and then the comedy felt like it was interrupting the action, and it wasn't that good to me.
Yeah.
The comedy for me didn't land a lot of the time, and that kind of for me felt weird. And overall, good movie. I had a fun time, but it kept it from being great in my opinion because of the comedy.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
That's
all right.
that's
Yeah.
totally fair. So I genuinely enjoyed this film. I was pretty much laughing the whole time, but I definitely don't disagree that there are some parts of the film that just don't hit as well as they probably should.
Yeah.
Maybe just because the comedic timing wasn't there, or the pacing of the scene was just a little weird. Most of it happens towards the end of the film, where the story kind of goes off the rails quite a bit. Literally.
I was waiting how long it would
and
take for us to
figuratively.
say off the rails in this episode.
But there was definitely a couple moments towards the end that were like you could tell that they had something almost there, but then either they didn't push it hard enough,
Yeah.
or they cut out like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue just for maybe the sake of time.
It almost doesn't go off the rails enough.
Yeah,
like-
like they don't lean into it hard enough.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I loved just kind of this nondescript, completely unrealistic vision of what it would be like on a Shinkansen or a bullet train, and just having the general setting of like, and this was really more Japanese adjacent than anything else.
Sure.
There wasn't really any kind of like Japanese culture inserts in there beyond just right at the beginning of the film,
Yeah.
and just a couple little like motifs of Japan. But
Yeah.
I have a feeling that because of the content of the film, they had to keep it as basically generic as possible. Especially from the rail line, you couldn't have any kind of JR line, which is the actual train line in Japan.
Yeah.
Or any kind of real discerning locations beyond just like this is Shizuoka Station or this is Kyoto Station, just because it's not the kind of film that probably Japanese like government would probably want you to see.
Sure. Yeah.
And think, oh, this is what it's like.
This
on
is
the
what
road.
it's like in Japan.
Not the greatest
Please ride our trains.
tourism advertisement.
Yeah.
Tourists, come buy our tickets where assassins may be trying to kill each other.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Steven?
I would say that the Japanese setting is just window dressing more
It
than
is.
is.
Yeah.
Well, and this is based on a novel, which
Mhm.
is written by a Japanese author. It was based on that. So trying to stay kind of true to that, puts them there. But they can't be perfect with the setting because, again, Japanese tourism boards kind of look at that and be like, you want to do what?
Yeah.
So, for me, obviously, I've already said I enjoyed this quite a bit. I enjoyed it far more than I expected to, which I think is a big factor.
I definitely did go in with basically zero expectations.
Yeah. Uh, it's interesting that you brought up that Brad Pitt wasn't charismatic enough.
Mhm.
So I like Brad Pitt. I like the idea that he, when he's in a movie, it's generally good. I also really like in things like Ocean's 11, he's not necessarily the primary character.
Yeah.
No.
Burn After Reading, he's not the primary character. I love him in that.
Oh, yeah,
That's
he's
the
great in
role
that.
he's born to play.
Yeah.
And so for this, having all these other characters who are kind of on the side, but also kind of almost main characters in their own right, was kind of a breath of fresh air. Because when Brad Pitt doesn't have to be the shining beacon carrying everything, there's a lot of room to play with it. And they did.
Sure.
They played with a lot of things.
Yeah, and the supporting cast for this film, which is very large,
Yes.
did a great job, I
Mhm.
thought. Only one that I didn't really like was it's kind of spoiler, so I have to wait until afterwards.
Okay. Well, that's
yeah,
fine.
we can hold on that.
But speaking of, since you brought up Edgar Wright and Guy Ritchie, and I haven't gone into any kind of details on this, this is actually directed by David Leitch or Leach.
I think it's Leach.
I think it's Leach.
Yeah.
I've probably butchered it, but it's fine. So you may know him from Deadpool 2.
Mhm.
He also had I think it's considered uncredited, or he's like a producer, not a director, but he was part of John Wick.
Mhm.
So he's a longtime stuntman and stuntman director who has gone to just directing. So one of the nice things there is he sets up really good stunts. He has a good group that he can draw on to set up good stunts. I think we saw that in this film. It has some
I
pretty
think the execution of all the fights and stunts
Oh,
are
yeah,
top notch.
fantastic.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
supposedly Brad Pitt did about 95% of his own stunts
Nice.
as well. So
Which good for him.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, because he's one of the I'll say one of the last true movie stars that from that kind of era
right.
that we grew up in,
Yeah.
where unless you're Tom Cruise, most places aren't going to insure you.
Well, because
for
Tom
doing-
Cruise just is insuring himself.
Exactly.
Basically. Yeah.
Where
Well-
it's always nice whenever you see actors like Brad Pitt that are doing their own stuff.
But I would say in this case too, most of the stunts are just fighting people in a room
they're
on
pretty-
a train.
they're pretty low
He's
scale.
not
Pretty low.
hanging off the outside of a plane. He's not
climbing
doing-
a big building.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Composer here is Dominic Lewis, which isn't a name I recognize, so I had to go and do some looking up. Freebirds is something he's known for. I don't know it.
Nope.
He did Peter Rabbit and Peter Rabbit 2. I don't know if
Classics.
that's a big
Bangers.
backing.
Two bangers
True
right there.
cinematic
Just like
masterpiece.
Snatch and Guy Ritchie, Peter
So-
Rabbit, man.
So the thing that I thought was interesting, though, is he was he worked with John Powell on How to Train Your Dragon. So he's been
Okay.
exposed to some really good music.
Yeah.
Worked with Hans Zimmer on Kung Fu Panda 2.
Cool.
Right? Did some things for Amazing Spider-Man 2, Captain America Winter
The
Soldier.
Amazing Spider-Man 2 soundtrack is actually quite good.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my personal
good film,
favorite
but-
thing out of this whole list is DuckTales. He is
Ooh.
Donald Duck's singing voice in the new DuckTales.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
that's awesome.
Right? What a random credit that is oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool. I'm going to bring that up.
Who are we going to get to do this? I got a guy.
I know someone who can sing like a duck.
So there's some really good. Speaking of the soundtrack, there are some great Japanese covers of popular music, like "Holding Out for a Hero" is
Yeah.
one, and honestly, I thoroughly enjoyed the soundtrack. We've been listening to it basically since we watched the film.
Yeah. So also, just some other facts. So this so far had 123 million box office. That's global. On about an $80 to $90 million budget.
That's actually not too bad.
Not too
So
bad. Yeah.
that's one. The budget's way lower than Again, this is an ensemble cast, right? We're talking
They must have
Brad
gotten Brad Pitt
Pitt.
pretty cheap.
Yeah,
Probably,
he
yeah.
must have done a favor or something here. Aaron Taylor Johnson, Brian Tyree Henry, Andrew Koji. We also have Joey King. Then Andrew's gonna love this one. Hiroyuki
Yeah.
Sanada.
Sanada.
Thank you. Along with
One of my favorite Japanese actors.
Oh, yeah, he's great. Love that.
he shows up in a lot of things that when they're like, we need a stern Japanese man.
Yeah, he's never really top billing.
Yeah.
But he's always a really welcome addition to basically any cast.
He's always solid.
Yeah.
and then topping it off with Sandra Bullock as Maria.
Yeah. Just the voice over the phone.
Yeah, well, she shows up at the end, and one of the reviews I hit, one of the things they said at the end was, Sandra Bullock's face is about the only thing I could tolerate in this film.
Oh, no.
It was
What?
at least welcome. I was like, dude, what is going on in your life? Wait, wouldn't you rather talk this out?
Not particularly, no.
Well, my therapist recommended me a great website.
Let me guess, they have a Patreon, a Discord, and lots of content.
Yeah. Hey, did you already know about spoilersintendedpodcast.com?
Yes, they have a spoiler wall to protect their listeners, I know.
Well, you know it's right behind you.
What?
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed a quick intermission. If you didn't get the hint, it is all spoilers all the time from here on out. And I think we're just going to kick this right off into spectacle. And I want to hear some thoughts from Ryan.
I gave it a 9.
Okay.
I thought
okay, wow.
the visuals, I thought, again, all the action scenes were incredibly choreographed.
Well, and they're very clear. Like, you know what was happening.
You know
again,
what's going on.
David Leitch having a stunt background is incredible. I want more directors to come from the world of stunt coordinators because
if they're going
there's
to
a
do
reason
action
why-
films.
yeah.
There's a reason why Jackie Chan films that he directed are very good.
Exactly. Like just having somebody that understands the flow of motion and how to set up fun, interesting fight scenes. Like, I think that was great. It's very colorful. I love all the the neon lights and the coloring. I saw some people complaining online about like the CG was bad. I didn't think it was bad at all. There was maybe at the end, like when the train is like going off the rails, but it's like, okay. Like to me, I thought visually it was a wild ride. I think all the set pieces, all the action's great.
The POV shots were really good too.
Oh yeah. Like everything to me from a spectacle standpoint was great.
Yeah.
I thought it was definitely a 9.
Yeah.
Andrew?
I gave it an 8.
Okay.
Mostly just I knocked it a little bit more for the CGI. But honestly, and some of the blood effects were a little silly.
Yeah.
Especially like whenever the Hornet gets basically a taste of her own medicine and like all the coagulated blood on her face. I was like,
yeah.
I didn't need to see that, but yeah, like the actual action scenes were just fantastic.
Yeah,
Like
great
you
fights.
could tell exactly what was happening every time, which is really important, I think, in a lot of modern films because most modern films are going to cut not to show the action because they're going to cut in between just so the actors don't actually have to do it.
I think for me, the bottom barrel of modern action being terrible is like the second Bourne movie. Or maybe the third one.
That's just shape. The thing is, they did it all. You
Yeah.
just can't tell they did it because they just grabbed the camera
They
and
just
shook
took
it
the
everywhere.
camera.
Yeah.
And there was seriously in one of those movies one scene where I was like, I don't know who won.
It was definitely the second
Yeah.
one.
It was the second one,
the
right?
second
Yeah.
one was when Shaky Cam got
It was-
real.
For me, that
brutal.
is like the low point of cinema, like action.
Which is amazing
Yeah.
because the actual movie is pretty good if
Right.
they would just stabilize the camera.
Yeah. But I loved all of the title cards. With the Japanese kanji and then the characters' names in front, I thought those were fantastic.
Yeah.
And the POV shot of the water bottle at the end was just absolutely incredible because it's such a good way to release some of the tension while getting a solid laugh out of it. But then also you have a pretty interesting POV of obviously the life of this this water bottle that has now culminated in in one of our characters not dying.
Yeah. So
well, it's a seemingly unimportant thing that like becomes a thread throughout the entire thing, and you didn't even notice.
You don't even
it.
notice. Yeah.
Well, I loved that because at that point the movie became kind of self-aware.
Yeah.
Like we've done a flashback for every other major player. Now you get to know the water bottles history. What?
Yeah. Well, you go long enough and it starts becoming a parody of itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so I gave it an 8, but really just knocked it just a little bit for some extra CGI stuff. Like at the end with it
Getting a little up there.
Going basically like ramping another sitting train over itself, and then it was totally fine, and then like crashing through an entire small Japanese town, which is really sad. But yeah.
Never unpack that, do they?
No, don't worry about that. We went very Marvel.
Yep.
So I also gave it a 9.
Oh,
Nice.
okay.
Yeah, I can see the complaints about some of the CGI.
Yeah.
But the color, the stylistic choices that were made, stuff with like the flashbacks where everyone got their own intro, and the characters were beyond performance thing, but their clothing, the style, the way they were introduced was all incredibly distinct. Like everything was memorable. There was
you knew who you were looking at.
yeah.
Everyone passed the silhouette test.
Yeah, there was never a moment where you saw 3 people sitting together on the train. You're like, which one's which?
Yeah.
Like it was never in doubt. So I really appreciated that. You know, the fight choreography in what is essentially a very tight confines. I mean, they have a fight where each character is sitting down opposite each other in a seat.
Yeah.
And it's great, right?
Yeah.
So I really, really give high marks for those kinds of things. And yeah, you know, the CGI may be a little rough towards the end. It's maybe a little ridiculous. But the thing is, up to that point, they kind of sucked me in so well that while disbelief dollars are at risk here, I was already past the point. Like, well, I'm already bought in. I just accept it.
Yeah,
right?
it is what it is.
Yeah. So it just doesn't hit it as hard as I would expect.
Yeah. And there are some, this is kind of more entertainment, I guess, but like there are some really good Yakuza gang member deaths during the ending sequence that were just hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, they you know, again, maybe making a little, there are also complaints in the reviews about making light over death and this kind of thing. So,
Oh,
well, but I mean,
please.
it's
not the
comedy
kind of,
action.
It's a
film.
comedy action film that
Went to the wrong
it's
movie.
all about assassins.
And it's
Like,
rated R. I don't know what you
Yeah,
expected.
I'm not sure what I expected there.
So, performance?
Yeah. I'll go.
Okay.
We'll probably
Andrew's-
start on a
Andrew's
high
excited.
note. I gave it a 9.
Okay.
I thought the so maybe it's just because I haven't seen any like the Ocean's films and Fight Club in a long time.
Oh, okay. No, I was like, you haven't seen
No, I have.
no,
I promise you I have.
Let him finish.
Please do not lynch me. Yeah, no, I definitely have seen them. But the last Brad Pitt film I watched, he wasn't even. It was also another Sandra Bullock film, Lost City,
I haven't seen that
which has Channing Tatum, oddly enough.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt's only in it for like a very short period of time, but he kind of plays the same character. Where he is a very capable, essentially action star. He's good at what he does, but he is very, wusa, very zen. And so going into this and seeing him kind of play the same character, but a little bit longer, I had so much fun with him just because that like, and it was actually pretty earned for most of the film. Like he clearly is good at what he does. But he just doesn't want to do it, and he doesn't want to kill people and that kind of stuff. But the supporting cast, I think, are what the really shining stars are for this film.
Yes,
because Joey King was actually really fun. She's not
as Prince.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you don't get a ton of her just because she's kind of the straight man, but she's also the most evil character probably out of it outside of her father.
She has the most nefarious goal.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I there wasn't a character that I didn't enjoy being on screen.
Yeah. So I'm gonna pick this up before we maybe take a dive. I also gave performance a 9. And a huge part of that, Brad Pitt as, kind of the reformed, bad luck. Well, he's turned to, the therapy and Zen and just, woosah, accept life.
Yeah.
That's a hilarious character. But for me, what really drove it was Aaron Taylor Johnson and Brian Tyree Henry.
Yeah.
As
both 3
they're
names.
so hard as Tangerine and Lemon, which is already a hilarious because they played on that a lot. But man, their chemistry, like when they're talking about past jobs and this kind of I believe it because they are definitely 2 guys who've been together a long time. They get along, but they're still gonna push back at each other and
and they definitely had the best chemistry out of everyone.
I think Aaron Taylor Johnson and Brad Pitt worked well together.
Every time you say that, I think you're going to say Aaron Taylor Thomas.
I know.
You mean Jonathan Taylor?
Jonathan
Thomas?
Taylor Thomas.
JTT?
But it's just it's just the same cadence.
The alliteration of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the cameos were fun. Channing Tatum
showing up. The cameo was a lot of fun.
So that was kind of fun. You have this triad here between the 3 of Bullock, Tatum, and Pitt, where they're like, well, yeah, I'll be in your movie if you'll be in mine.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine, I'll do it. For cheap now. We don't have much budget.
So just going back, I actually wasn't a fan of Michael Shannon as the White Death.
Really?
I love Michael Shannon, to be clear.
Oh, I actually don't like him at
I think he's fantastic.
I was so sad whenever I saw him.
What else has he done?
He was Zod in Man of
Zod and
Steel.
Superman.
Okay.
He was what is that movie called? I watched a movie that was basically him as like a mob enforcer back in the 70s. Loved him in that.
So basically, for me, he's kind of a blank slate because I couldn't, when I saw him on screen, I didn't immediately go, oh, he was on
Well, he
such and
looks
such.
kind of like the guy that played Vicious in Cowboy Bebop.
He does, yes.
Ugh.
Which,
and it's
live
basically
action,
the
yeah.
same kind of
Ugh.
character.
It is the same kind of character. I do think it's better done here.
It was.
So
his
he
voice
gives
was
up on the
still really
Russian
bad.
accent halfway through.
does.
It, though.
Yeah,
He
he
just
does.
stops.
Yeah.
He like does it for like the first 2 or 3 scenes he's on screen, and then all of a sudden he's like, "I'm done with that." And it's like, was this like a reshoot? And they forgot they shot the first part in Russian accent, or like, did the Russian dude? Is he secretly American?
Yeah.
All right, I'm hearing
What's
some,
happening?
I'm hearing some complaints over here from Ryan. You want to give us a score?
Oh, I gave it a 6. I didn't like the performance for
Whoa.
most people. Yeah.
Wow.
The comedy just didn't land for me. I think especially Brad Pitt. Again, it was like baffling to me to sit in the theater. Every movie I've ever seen Brad Pitt in, I've enjoyed him. And I
Huh.
thought he was
That's
charismatic and great.
crazy.
I got to this movie, it felt to me, ironically, like this movie was written for Ryan Reynolds and Brad Pitt filled in.
Which is-
because
Because Ryan Reynolds is also a
I
cameo.
know, which is a cameo in here, which is, I had that thought before his cameo happened. I was like, this feels like it
So,
should have been Ryan Reynolds.
Which is, are we going meta here since he's the
Right.
replacement
Now,
for?
I don't like Ryan Reynolds as much anymore. His whole thing has gotten to where he's just playing himself in every movie.
I do not like Ryan Reynolds
Right.
at all.
I used to like Ryan Reynolds, and every time, almost everything I see him in since, it's like every time it goes down a little bit more.
Yeah.
But
Which
like,
is funny because I'm actually totally fine with it because it's kind of like going into, like an Alec Baldwin movie or something. Like I know
Yeah.
what I'm going to get, and baseline, it's fine. It's really a question of what else can we get around it.
yeah.
So
But so to me, like a lot of the jokes did not feel, they just didn't hit. Like when
Oh,
Brad Pitt
man.
said them, I didn't laugh at all like, at Brad Pitt. All of his parts felt stilted and almost phoned in to me. Like
Oh, wow.
for me, Tangerine and Lemon were the movie. I wish the movie had been about them. Their charisma.
I mean, they were definitely
great,
they were
yeah.
definitely the shining stars.
I was concerned for their safety. Right.
Right,
I
yeah.
wanted these characters to live and continue on because I wanted more. Right.
Well, and you kind of knew going in that Brad Pitt wasn't going to die.
Sure,
Mostly just because like that was kind of the
that would have
whole
been
shtick.
one
the whole
heck
stick of
a
Ladybug,
twist.
yeah.
Yeah.
But like I think too, like there's just certain scenes with him that it just didn't connect for me. Like when the Hornet, is that her name?
Yeah.
She
Yes.
injects herself with the poison, and he's like quipping while she's like horrifically dying. It felt very glib. It didn't like come across as like,
That
I think someone else could have done that and made it like funny. But when he did it, for me at least,
I have
it
things
didn't.
to say, but that's for plot.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was a lot of the side characters were great. I think Andrew Koji is another one who kind of struggled. He was just kind of mopey through the whole movie. He's the one who played Kimura.
Yeah, the father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never understood his plight fully or cared about it enough. And he
Really?
always like was
Interesting.
just kind of like down.
I mean,
and,
his
like when
his
his
kid got thrown off of a building.
right,
Yeah.
but like because he was a bad dad. Like I didn't care about it. When he got shot. I was like, okay,
Well-
he's dead. Way to go. Bye.
Well, but that's the thing. He wasn't even really I wouldn't even consider him a supporting character. He's kind of a MacGuffin as well.
okay, yeah.
He's more a reason for
I
the
just feel
elder
like
to show up.
Yeah.
if I could have cared about him and his story and Brad Pitt and his story as much as I cared about Lemon and Tangerine, I would have liked it a whole lot more.
Yeah.
But I didn't
Well,
ultimately.
Like, but it's definitely like, so his character is very much the like the traditional
Mhm.
Yeah.
like, oh my kid's, in the hospital and now you have leverage over me because I can't do anything because you're
Right.
going to kill him otherwise.
Yeah.
And that's like as far as I went, like I was like, all right, that's enough for me. Like he's just going to be this
He is
tragic
that person.
character.
Yeah.
And he actually didn't do anything even at the end. Like they're
No.
like, he doesn't know that my son and I are here. And it's like your son literally did nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just
Like-
kind of existed.
So my last thing I'll say, not to be just too negative, I just want to reiterate why I gave it a 6. I think the comedy got into this situation where it was almost like Family Guy, where it's like a thing happens and then we flash back, a thing happens and then we like flash back and we get like the backstory of some of these people. They're not all created equal. Some of those backstories were like fun and
Yeah.
interesting. Others felt like they interrupted the flow of what's happening.
So I think my favorite, like I actually genuinely loved the Mexican cartel.
The
Yeah,
wolf.
that was a
That
really
was,
good one.
that was fantastic.
Yeah. But that whole like side plot and flashback was great. So that's
Well-
I guess my problem is I feel like that number one, the plot that's more plot I guess, but like
It is plot.
Yeah, we'll say that. But like for performances, it felt like the comedy, I don't know if it was an editing issue, I don't know if it was the writing or if it was delivery, but like some jokes felt like they had too much like space at the end of them and they didn't land right because the timing felt weird. I don't know again if that was delivery. Others felt like they didn't have enough like space for it to really land. It just felt, again, performance-wise, I feel like I've seen movies like Snatch, I've seen movies from Edgar Wright where like the dialogue is quippy, it's popping back and forth and things are hitting on all cylinders. And for me, for this movie, it just didn't. It felt like it needed another pass in the editing room or maybe another pass with like different takes from the actors.
So there definitely was a couple times where like some of the jokes felt like it was either one level too complex for what they were talking about, or one level too simple for what it could have been.
Yeah.
But most of that really happened towards the end of the film where the plot starts literally just going completely off the side.
Off the rails,
whatever.
We should have a counter.
Ding.
Just because like the content was just so different at that point compared to the beginning of the film where everyone's still like, it's not open violence.
Yeah.
So score?
Yeah. Score? You need to start.
I need to start?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like this is going to be a middle of the road choice here. I gave it a 7.
Okay.
I liked the kind of the poppy covers, if you will, stuff that hit, Holding Out for a Hero. I think 500 Miles was in there as well.
Yeah.
A couple I feel like those work for the time, the setting. It's not like we're going to the 1700s and we drop, Backstreet Boys in there or something.
Yeah.
Like you can pull it off. There are some, Knight's Tale comes to mind.
Yeah.
But for the setting, for what's going on, it worked really well.
Yeah.
I think maybe where I've lacked or missed some was we were very heavy into action and comedy, and we didn't really have, because there's some dramatic moments. There's some that we didn't really get a whole lot behind that.
Okay.
And that going from some of the the actual like songs to like a composition was maybe almost a little jarring in a sense, where it was like, well, there's just not.
Well,
not
a
the
lot
same.
of the soundtrack was like kind of hip hop rock
Yeah,
kind of
and,
stuff.
and like that carries action really well.
Yeah.
But for some of the other, like with the Elder, where we have kind of the dramatic, old school Japanese crime type thing.
Yeah.
That's not really like a hip hop rock subject. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's much more of a traditional.
Well, it felt
score.
more tongue in cheek.
It was funny because I didn't really read it that way. I actually was like, wow, they're taking this kind of seriously, and it's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I just think the music just for the action and the upbeat stuff, it was there. For some of the others, it was maybe just not there enough.
Yeah.
So, Andrew?
I gave it a 9.
Andrew loves this score.
I loved this soundtrack. Genuinely, like, I just really loved the Japanese covers, which were really fun.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a substantial amount of just like the really heavy rock, like as more of like atmospheric pieces, like whenever they did like some of the flashbacks, especially of the White Death, like taking over the Yakuza family and everything. Like those were really cool. And it works really well when it's all in slow motion and you have like the fire around you and everything. The one, probably the only real big nitpick that I had was, and this is kind of like performance and score, but this is more like just audio mixing. Some of the dialogue was a little hard to understand.
Yeah.
Particularly when British accents are also trying to whisper. And
Right.
maybe it's just because I'm like, I'm not British, so I'm not used to listening to that kind of accent.
Yeah.
So there's a couple times where they're whispering and I'm like, what did they just say? But like you still understand what they're saying, but it's like it would have been nice for me to like actually hear it.
Yeah, like understand what they're saying.
Yeah.
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 All right, I'll jump in. I gave it a 5.
Oh.
I did not care for the score. My favorite part was the Japanese covers
Yeah.
of songs. I almost wish they had just stuck with that the whole way through.
It would have been better, honestly,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Because the actual score, not the pop songs or anything, the score of it was, to me, a bit forgettable. Like it was there,
Yeah.
it was serviceable, but it didn't stand out or really make me like notice it in any way that made me think like, ooh, that, and like you're saying, Stephen, like there's a few times where it transitions from like the pop song to the score that felt kind of weird.
It's jarring.
Audio mixing wise, maybe that was more of the issue. Or,
Yeah.
But for me, the songs they chose, again, outside of the Japanese covers, none of them hit for me. Like, I tried to listen to the soundtrack afterwards because I was like, maybe I just need to just listen to it. Still didn't care for them. They feel very all over the place. And again, not to harp on the same thing, but I feel like somebody like an Edgar Wright or a Guy Ritchie or a Tarantino would have brought in a bunch of like songs that made, to me, more sense.
Sense for the context of whatever
For the context
scene it was,
would have been more memorable and more like impactful. Like I don't want to say Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm just trying to think of like Edgar Wright's a good one because he always has really good song choices that hit, and it's like, this song makes this scene. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there are so many moments, especially thinking like Baby Driver, where like, the music hits and it's like perfect.
It
Like,
helps with a lot of those style of movies because often the music is in the movie, right? The characters are listening to it and acting on it, whereas this was not.
Yeah.
I do find it kind of interesting that I ended up dead center of the two of you because I was kind of like, man, am I being harsh? Am I being too kind? I don't know. Well, apparently I could have gone either way.
yeah. Again, I like the Japanese covers. I just kind of wish maybe they had done nothing but Japanese covers for all of the songs. Maybe that's the way they went with it.
I would have preferred that.
That would have been fun.
Great. Yeah, that would have been great.
That would have been like a theme. So for me, that's the problem. Is it felt like the music was all over the place. There wasn't a cohesive thing, and some of the songs hit, and they just felt like generic rock song.
Yeah, well,
or it didn't feel like, oh, this song is making this scene. I've got to.
Yeah. Well, and you had the really nice cutaway for the for Lemon and Tangerine's backstory with the or not really the backstory, but them going over how many people they
the
killed.
prior job, or how they
Bolivia.
How they got him.
Yeah, how they got hit their first half of the MacGuffin.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of how they got it and the first half of MacGuffin, let's talk about plot. I'm gonna take this one first.
Sure.
I gave it a 7,
Okay.
and I've props here, right, for how much is going on, all the goals that everyone has. I felt like it was very clear what everyone wanted and how they were trying to get it.
Yeah.
And I think the flashbacks helped a lot here because it made it obvious, like, why is the wolf coming onto the train? Well, we get a chunk of that, right?
Yeah.
And even though his goal is maybe a little misaligned and that kind of thing, I ding it because, the third act, the end is like, again, off the rails. But
That's 3.
That's 3, okay. And let's see how many more we can stuff in here.
I think that's like 5, actually. I think.
But there are some moments within that I really love, like when the train wreck is happening and Pitt is flying down the hallway and the big mascot suit saving him essentially because he just hits it like a cushion.
Yeah.
Like that actual scene, I thought that was amazing and really well done. And Pitt, it's just the huge spectacle that was going on around it was just like, okay, yeah, guys, okay, get it out of your system.
So in our theater, there was a lady that was like down on the just like on one of the other earlier rows, and you just audible just, oh, okay, like as it's happening.
Really?
Yeah.
I would love to tell you that we had great laughs or groans in our theater, but there were only like 3 people in it.
Oh,
so.
we had almost a full theater.
Oh, wow.
For us.
Okay.
And,
well, you went on a Friday, right?
Yeah, we went on a Friday, and the guys next to me, they were having a grand old time.
I mean, Lauren and I were both loved it, honestly.
Yeah.
That's entertainment. Sticking back with plot, I love the little subplot of like the boomerang snake. Was it boomerang? Yeah.
Boom slang.
Boom slang. Snake,
Close
at its little meanderings of its own journey within the train.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just the way stuff came together. This is, again, Edgar Wright, Guy Ritchie, these types of films where everything kind of collides is my favorite way to set up a plot because, one, it feels difficult to do, and 2, it can be very, very satisfying, right?
Yeah.
Where small things build and add into this problem now, et cetera, et cetera. And for the most part, that worked out here. I think maybe there was a little too much. The flashbacks probably hurt pacing a little bit at times, especially because the flashbacks felt like some people got a lot of time and others got less.
Well, sorry, continue.
Oh, no, you were fine. It's just one of those things that kind of got me where if each flashback was set, well, hey, we get like Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Yeah.
We're going to do the backstory and everyone gets 15 seconds. That's it. Well, now we have 3 people. Well, you only get 15 seconds. You got to go. And if they had done something like that, I think it would have worked a little better.
Yeah.
But yeah, that about does it for me.
Okay, I'll jump in because I also gave it a 7. I thought the plot was good. I like movies that everything comes together in the end, and there's no obvious plot holes. There's no obvious like, oh, he just knew to go here. You know,
how did he get
when he
there?
got bit by the snake,
that was questionable.
It was questionable, and I was like, but if you already have anti-venom in, does that stop it?
I'm not a doctor, but I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I have no,
I was like, I don't know anything about that. I'm just going to go with that.
I'm happy though they at least justified it, where he said it to the other character. Well, I guess I just got so much anti-venom right now still in me.
It's like, oddly enough,
let it slide.
Even the movie was like, is that how this works?
Yeah.
I thought that for as fast as this movie moves, like, because it's kind of a blistering pace.
Yeah.
Obviously, Bullet Train, but it never gets confusing.
No.
Like everything is
exactly,
very clear.
Yeah.
And again, the way it moves from scene to scene is good. The only thing I think, again, for me is like the structure of some of the flashbacks were not all created equal. And so sometimes it kind of broke the flow of it a little bit.
Yeah.
I think we talked about the Bolivia job like 8 times and showed that same shot of them
in the rain
8
or whatever.
times in the rain. And I was like, why? Like, we get it. They were in Bolivia. And it almost became like a parody of itself or a joke within a joke.
Yeah.
And that didn't really connect with me. Yeah. And I think really it's just the ending, like the third act, is a little bit messy, but like I think it has to be. Everything's careening towards this point,
Out of
and then
control.
like the thing with Joey King and Michael Shannon, like she's his daughter.
I
and
like that. That was a good.
I didn't see
one.
that coming, so that was
Yeah.
cool. The twist that Ryan Reynolds, was
is Carver.
Carver, and like that's why everyone on this train was supposed to be here because he's getting revenge. Because
I hate Carver.
I was waiting the whole time for like why are all these assassins here? So I think they did a good job with the plot of laying all that out. Really, it was just a kind of a flow thing of like bouncing between action and comedy. It wasn't as tight as it could have been.
Yeah.
Well, and I want to jump into on your point about why everyone is there. I really like the way they did it, because where did his plan fail? And it was the pieces that he didn't put in play.
Yeah.
Right. That he didn't deliberately put on the train, or the parts that failed him.
Yeah.
Where the plan collapsed. Andrew?
So I gave it a 6.
I didn't.
wow.
I actually thought we were going to go in a different
I
direction.
did too.
No. So, okay. So there's a couple layers to this.
Okay.
The first layer is if you are at all familiar with how Japanese Shinkansens work, this is not the film.
And Andrew
to
is
watch.
having my problem.
I was going to say.
So,
right now,
but okay, so it's one of those things where there's a lot of disbelief dollars at play here.
Yep.
I already kind of knew what I was getting into with the film, so I
Sure.
accept that there's going to be some absolutely absurd stuff. Because even in the trailer, they have him where like the train's moving and like they're hanging out on the side of the train. So whatever.
We knew it was going to be a problem.
Yeah. But you look at that and you have to say, okay, well, none of this actually makes sense if this is brought into the real world, unless you have this crime boss that essentially runs that
He has
train
so
line.
much pull.
And he has so much pull that he can either pay off the workers, he can pay off the and essentially control the train as remotely as you possibly can, which you can with bullet trains. And there really should be no way that a person can control it there. Basically, like there are definitely ways to do it.
Sure.
But it is not one of those things where there's just like a throttle.
Yeah.
Right.
For like, make the train go fast, make the train go slow. So you have that. So honestly, my biggest problem that immediately took me out of the film was the elder teleporting like 13 different stations ahead.
He caught a different bullet train.
Exactly. Because he is like, because the only time that he knows that his son is even on the train, they're already on the train going.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's like, so you're going to Kyoto, and then like, a couple, things later, he's just at a train station. So like, but there's no explanation.
Maybe he
beyond
got on
it
a
at all.
helicopter. Maybe he caught a flight.
It's possible that, because we don't know the time difference of whenever he was at the hospital with his son.
Yeah.
Looking at the
To, like, the
grandson,
next day or whatever.
Yeah, it could be a substantial amount of time. He just happens to live that direction.
And yeah, but for all we know, he traveled up to Tokyo.
Or he was
then
on
went-
basically the line before that.
Right.
But we don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, with those kind of things, then you have like the Yakuza just being available at every train station that they need to stop at.
This guy's got some major pull.
major pull.
Yeah.
So like there's some, kind of a couple things here and there that-
Conveniences, I
yeah.
guess, plot conveniences. Yeah.
Because at some point, like this is a linear line that is going down one way,
Yeah.
and you have to either justify it or just completely ignore it when they completely ignored it. Which is, that you just have to assume that it's the Yakuza. He's one of the most powerful crime bosses in the
The
world.
White Death.
He can
And
just do whatever he wants.
Also, I would just go ahead and say that he seems fairly prepared for this, being in that
That's true.
So he may have, devil's advocate, have
this is-
prepared
Exactly.
a team of
Yeah.
Yakuza
it
at
would
every
have been
stop.
nice to have something in
Well,
there to
they
explain.
did kind of
Yeah.
give it to us in the sense that he orchestrated them being on the train.
Yeah.
Like the only reason everyone collides on the train is because he wanted them
He
all
wanted
there
them
because
all on
he
there.
wants revenge for
and he,
a
and
specific
he was like, "Well, I was
happening.
hoping that you'd kill each other by the time you got here,
Yeah.
but you didn't, and now it's my problem." But yeah, so like that was kind of the biggest thing for me, and it wasn't even that like oh, this isn't how trains work kind of thing. It was really more on the lines of there's a couple teleporting characters that I've knocked
Sure.
it for, and then you just have to assume that he has bought off literally everyone that
He
is
spent a
rumored.
lot of money on this.
Yeah.
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 So that's why I gave it a
We,
6.
we take it for what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
But
fair.
The rest of the film made sense, and it was totally fine. I didn't even care that Brad Pitt survived the whole the train crash, because it's definitely one of those things where like that's kind of the whole point of the film is that he's actually not bad luck at all. He's actually very lucky.
Yeah, because he survived all these things that
Yeah.
should have killed other people.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
he just feels like it's bad luck because he.
Yeah,
I feel like that is a good wrap to that story too. But
Yeah.
So they stuck the landing there for sure on showing all
The-
these cases where he's so unlucky
Yeah.
led to him being actually really lucky.
Yeah.
and like
you
the
know?
kind of the handling, because it's kind of a higher end concept for what the movie presented itself as, of like the idea
Yeah.
of fate and luck and bad
Yeah.
luck and these things. It was kind of interesting just to have that in there. It just,
Yeah.
Entertainment,
Entertainment.
Ryan.
I'll go first. I gave it a 7. I liked it. It wasn't bad. I just think that I enjoyed the action a lot more than I enjoyed the comedy.
Yeah.
I don't want to beat a dead horse because I've said the whole episode.
Go off the rails.
Yeah, I really feel like this is a fun movie. I would watch it again, but it does not end up in that upper echelon for me as some classics like Hot Fuzz, Snatch, other frantic, high-paced, action comedies.
Yeah.
To me, the humor in this I didn't even laugh as much as I did in Deadpool 2, which is another David Leitch movie.
Yeah.
It felt similar in some ways, but for whatever reason, I felt the humor in something like Deadpool 2 just connected more with my sense of humor, maybe, or maybe, I don't know. Again, I liked Lemon and Tangerine.
Mhm.
Brad Pitt just fell flat for me, and I think I enjoyed it. I would watch it again. It was a visual thrill ride. It was
Yeah.
absolutely a fever dream, but it it just lacked polish in, I think, the music choices and the performance and the comedy to really pull it together to be fantastic.
So I gave it a 9.
Okay.
I don't like Snatch as much as you guys do.
Right.
Yeah.
I've seen it one time. It was fine. I would watch
A
it
long
again.
time ago.
A
We,
long-
we need
yeah.
to do a rewatch.
Yeah, but it was definitely one of those films where I was like, this is a film.
Yeah.
I was not impressed or unimpressed with it. It's just there.
Yeah.
This was one of those films where visually it was super fun. The
Mhm.
action scenes were great. I enjoyed the comedy. The music was there. And, I can forgive a lot of the plot, discrepancies that I have
Yeah.
just because maybe it's the setting, because I've been on a Shinkansen to Kyoto.
Yeah.
It was just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I genuinely just enjoyed it. It's definitely going to be one of those films whenever it comes out, I'll probably actually buy the Blu-ray for it.
Look out.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, why not? I gave it a 9 as well.
Yeah.
And this is kind of my reference sounding board point, right? So if we ever do a Snatch or a Hot Fuzz, those are a 10 entertainment for me. I've watched both those movies a lot.
I mean, Hot Fuzz is definitely a 10
it's-
entertainment. It's
yeah.
fantastic.
Both those are 10 entertainments for me as well.
So just for your at home listening reference board here,
Connect
so yeah.
all the red string on the,
Yeah.
the wall.
So
He said Snatch was a 10.
Ryan actually brought up a name earlier in the discussion here about Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
which is I thought was really interesting because a lot of reviews referenced him and not Edgar Wright or Guy Ritchie. Like you could almost not find anyone.
Really?
And I'm just going to go ahead and raise my hand here. I do not like Tarantino at all.
I also do not like.
I'll
Tarantino
raise my hand and
at
I
all.
say I love Tarantino. He's one of my favorite filmmakers.
Get out of
Continue.
here.
I feel like no. I feel like what we have here is proof that this is not a Tarantino-esque film.
Yeah,
because it
this
didn't
is
it
an
didn't hit as
Edgar
well.
Wright,
This is
Guy
a Guy
Ritchie.
Ritchie, Edgar Wright style. And I think it's interesting because it feels kind of like David Leitch is kind of working his way through the balance between like a John Wick versus a Deadpool 2
Sure.
and trying to find that ground that he is where it's like his own.
Yeah.
Because it did miss maybe some of the snappier, if it's Edgar Wright, the cuts would have been really snappy.
Oh, yeah.
And he does a lot of the zoom into an object kind of thing.
A lot of purposeful filmmaking, too, that kind of, again, marries that action.
And it helps a
comedy.
lot.
Yeah.
And this one maybe didn't quite have that, but it doesn't matter because the comedy hit for me, the action hit for me. The only thing that I would put it as Tarantino-esque is it's a little bloody.
Yeah,
He loves.
there's some gruesome deaths. In
Yeah,
there.
he loves his blood, and I guess that's where people drew the comparison.
It felt very Kill Bill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really did.
Kind of, but
Well, just like with the over the top deaths.
Yeah.
I guess it,
But Lauren and I came out of the theater, and both of us loved it, which is that in itself is a big win.
Yeah,
When something like that is on screen and she's not grossed out or something like that.
Yeah.
So obviously the other elements won out, and that includes with Tangerine dying and losing one of the big characters and someone that she really liked. She really enjoyed that. So having that, like that's a big commit from someone to take what is obviously absolute fantastic on-screen chemistry and be like, there will be no sequel with these characters.
right. Yeah.
So yeah, I loved it. Absolutely.
I wonder about a lot of the points we've brought up of like how accurate it is to the book.
yeah. I didn't even know it was based on a book.
So
Right.
So I'm glad you mentioned the book because we should actually mention. So the book is titled Maria Beetle,
Okay,
which is actually the name of Sandra Bullock's character. So I
Okay.
wonder what the perspective maybe is. The author is Kotaro Isaka,
hmm
and I probably butchered that.
you probably did.
I totally did, but it's
That's
okay. So it's from 2010,
Mhm.
and it's interesting because there's been objections in reviews and critics and everything about it's Brad Pitt and a bunch of British dudes all this on a train in Japan, and the author is actually pretty on board with. He basically was just like, well, why do you think that my assassins were Japanese, kind of thing.
So in the book, I guess he never really.
I guess again, I haven't read it.
Yeah.
I would be interested to read it based on this, just to see the differences, because. Yeah, I love the film. Maybe I'll love the book too. I don't know.
Yeah, and you got it right. It's Kotaro Isaka.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's also my earlier, not in here, but I really hesitated on Hiroyuki's last name because I was like, wait a minute, there's another Hiroyuki.
There's Hiroyuki Sawano. There's Hiroyuki Sanada.
It's apparently a
Popular name.
It's relatively.
it's
common.
popular enough from our perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
So who do you guys think this movie is for?
Me.
Okay. Outside of Andrew, what type of person should watch this movie?
It's a Edgar. If you are an Edgar Wright, a Guy Ritchie, maybe a Tarantino fan.
I think if you like Burn After Reading, this is definitely.
Yeah, I mean, again, Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels came to mind.
Any kind of ensemble cast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it definitely-
Ocean's 11 type of movie.
Maybe not Ocean's 11.
Maybe
but-
not.
Well, just
this
Well,
felt-
because I
this
feel like a
felt
lot of people that like Oceans that don't like would probably not enjoy the gore.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, this
Necessarily,
is
or-
a different level for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
because Ocean's is like PG-13,
Right.
and this absolutely earns its R rating.
Oh yes, it does.
cannot be stated enough. Even though you have hilarious stuff like the toilet seat where he wrote "Do not open snake" and stuff like that on
Right.
there.
The Yakuza gang members at the end, they're like face masks,
Yeah.
and just like their general look, was so cool.
And that was
The
basically
guy- the
straight
dude
out
with
of an
the
anime.
mohawk.
Oh, yeah, the Mohawk.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like
man.
straight out of an anime.
Yep.
That's the kind of character I expect. But it helps, right? Because we have faceless mooks, but now we can at least identify different ones.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think.
So
on
who's
that
it
note-
not for?
Whoa, whoa.
Like, who should avoid it?
people that like Tarantino. I don't know. I mean,
It's-
out
I
of
didn't get the
out
yeah.
of 2 out of 3 people that don't like Tarantino, but we love this film,
Yeah.
and then the one person that does like Tarantino didn't like this film.
I mean, if you don't like a lot of over the top violence,
Yeah,
this is not for you.
I would say steer clear.
Yeah. So small thing that I really loved was every time you had cursing in Japanese. They subtitled it, but just with
explicit.
the little characters instead of anything. I thought that was hilarious.
They want you to know they're cursing.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, especially like the little girl with the water bottle where it gets stuck. She's because they can say anything they want to, and it just goes right on by.
Yeah. Who do you think this movie is for and not for?
Yeah, you've been quizzing us. Come on.
I was just trying to like start the conversation. I think if you like Snatch, if you like Edgar Wright, you should give it a shot.
Yeah.
I think for me, the comedy just didn't land.
Yeah.
I think that, for a lot of people, it obviously does. So like, I think anyone that likes movies with a plot that all revolves around like a bunch of characters interacting and things kind of locking into place as it goes.
Yeah, individual plot lines all coming together.
And I think anyone that's a fan of action should see this.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
this is one of the better action movies that's come out in the past,
In a while.
decade.
years,
Almost. Yeah, like in a long time. Like, again, I can't stress enough. All the fights are fantastic. So if you just want a blisteringly fast, action movie, this is perfect for you. I think people that maybe should avoid it are people that really, really, really want really tight, well-connected action and comedy.
Yeah.
Because again, that was my biggest thing was like Brad Pitt just didn't land for me. Other characters did. I think if you want something that's like laser focused start to finish on like being a cohesive Edgar Wright style movie, this doesn't quite do it.
Yeah.
It's almost like David Leitch was doing a Guy Ritchie impersonation instead of actually doing probably what David Leitch needs to do. So I'm hoping his next movie, like you're saying, between Deadpool 2 and like John Wick and stuff, he can like, this is what a David Leitch movie is.
Yep.
So I think we're on the right track for sure.
Yeah.
He just needs to tighten up the back and forth.
Yeah.
That is definitely, his next movie that comes out, I'm going to pay really close attention to. Like, I honestly, I don't know if I would have seen this movie if we hadn't decided we were going to do it for the cast.
Yeah.
Or if I would have caught it, like on streaming or
Probably
or
same
whatever.
here,
Yeah.
So,
I forced them to. It was me.
Well, don't go that far because we were all kind of like, yeah, that looks kind of like it could be, a total fever trip. Well, what if it's really bad? Or well, what if it's really
I
good?
think the marketing for this wasn't that great.
It was not
No,
good.
it was
Like I
not
think
good.
the trailers made it out to be way more generic than what it ended up being.
Yeah, exactly.
So I kind of was reluctant to go see it just because the trailers I watched,
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, it looks like it might be kind of fun. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely going forward, looking for the next David Leitch film to see what he can bring.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But on that note, I do believe that is all the time we have for this episode. So until next time, I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Ryan.
And as always, every spoiler was intended.